Now, our next guest will talk to us about some of the big uncertainties that are coming. Jon Reilly is joining us from Implemented Portfolios, where he is CIO. Jon, welcome to the program. I'd like to just get your thoughts. We've had some news this morning that Abbott Labs in the US has come up with a quick turnaround COVID test. So we're talking, 5 to 15 minutes as opposed to, the waits that we've been experiencing here, which are at least 24 hours. I mean, is this the type of game changer that we need to sort of figure out the direction of the recovery that we're going to be emerging through?
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you, Nadine. Hi, Daniel. Good to be with both of you again this morning. I did hear you, the couple of previous speakers discuss this as well, and do agree, particularly from a US point of view. It's fine for them to talk about the number of tests they're actually completing, but if it takes a week, 10 days to actually get you the results, of course, it's a useless process. So yeah, absolutely, I think that would be a game changer. And in particularly importance, obviously, in terms of being able to get people back to work. So that is progress to be cheered, absolutely.
I mean, it's all well and good to have these tests. They get faster, they get to spread more widely, but at what point in time is it going to have to be just about the vaccine? When will testing and speed of testing no longer be as important, do you think?
So I think that's one of the two really big uncertainties that Nadine referred to before, but I think we'll get a resolution to within the next couple of months. I'm feeling there's a groundswell of progress being made here, and we're perhaps not too far away from a significant announcements. The testing's one thing, of course, but Oxford University and AstraZeneca seem to be leading the world. It was encouraging to see some good news coming out of the University of Queensland from a local sense in terms of progress on vaccines there as well. And so when we gathered as an investment committee earlier this week, that was one of the big things we were thinking, and really quite a divergent outcome you're going to see there. Vaccine versus further growth in virus cases, obviously leading to economic lockdowns, and we can see in real time the price the Victorians are paying, both individually but also in terms of the reduced contribution to the labour market and to overall Australian economic growth. So that's been a really important one. I think more encouragingly, from a New South Wales point of view, we've seen very low case counts despite outbreaks over the last couple of months. When you look across the bigger picture, it's not just AstraZeneca. Obviously, there's dozens of clinical teams chasing vaccines around the world. The governments are lining themselves up. I know in the EU and the US, they've already lined up 800 million doses. I think Japan's at about 500 million. Collectively, through the end of 2021, we're talking about sort of 10 trillion doses of a vaccine being available. I'm sure many of your listeners would have also seen Dr. Anthony Fauci interviewed on 60 Minutes on Sunday night, who thinks all of this comes by the end of 2020. Now, the caution there, though, is it's not an all clear, ring the bell signal and we're back to normal, of course. There's still going to be risks along the way. Principal amongst those, I would think, in the United States, but also to a lesser extent in Australia and other developed nations in particular, there's a good correlation between sort of faith and confidence in government and authority and the efficacy in which countries have dealt with the outbreak. And will be equally important, I think, in how they deal with the vaccine as well. The anti-vaxxer crowd, the religious right, I know there's religious leaders in Australia already that are starting to ask questions about whether the vaccine's appropriate or not. So there's going to be questions along the way. I think the US is probably at the forefront of that as well. And principally what we're talking about there is obviously, will they get to that herd immunity level where, the coronavirus is under control and we don't focus on it anymore.
Okay, well, just getting word that we're hearing that there will be 113 new cases in Victoria, so those numbers still, much improved on what they were a couple of weeks ago. 23, sadly, new deaths in Victoria. I don't have the New South Wales updated information now. So you referenced your investment meeting. When it comes to, I guess, the other sort of major influences that you're considering as you look at your investment thesis, you've got to think that the US election would also be a point of discussion in there.
I think it's easily the most consequential election that the US is going to face in generations, and it's going to have huge global consequences as well. And again, a really stark set of potential outcomes here as well. Somewhat staggeringly, the Republicans are going through their convention process at the moment without having put up a policy platform. Never been done before. It really does just underline the cult of personality, and so their policy will be whatever dear leader, and I use that term deliberately, decides on any given day. So I think there's going to be some global implications for that as well. But there's a lot of uncertainty around that election outcome between now and November 3. It's important there not to focus too much on the national polls. We know what happened in 2016, and rightly we're going to be reminded by poll skeptics, if I can call them that, to say, hey, don't think this is in the bag and we shouldn't. But I think we'll see potentially really significant changes depending on where the cards fall post November 3. There is, I think, a very serious chance that the Democrats take the White House, the Senate, and retain control in the House. If you do see that, I think there'll be significant changes in terms of government structure, things like getting rid of the filibuster. You're already starting to see, I think, 2024 GOP candidates starting to return to that sort of deficit scold mentality. So there's real potential differences in the outcome going forward. I think there's very big risks about what an erratic president does between November 3 and January 20. And candidly, many of his family members are admitting that they're worried about their legal standing without the protection of the White House behind them. On a more positive note, I think what you'll see is Biden put a very, very competent cabinet together. And so what we're really looking for is the US going to re-engage with the world? Do we pick up the baton of globalization again? Does the US support global institutions which have underscored a period of relative stability for half a century? Or do we go and retreat further into our corners with more protectionism and more saber rattling? So really, again, quite stark different outcomes there.
Do you think you could potentially try and estimate a number though, John? Ultimately, if it's a Biden victory versus a Trump victory, how big a difference will the US equity market see in percentage terms?
Well, look, I mean, you can't have that conversation without prefacing it around how extraordinarily concentrated the US equity market has been. And I know you guys talk about this all day, every day, but the top 5 companies are up 50%. The other 495 are down calendar year to date. So I think you can see some significant re-rates in that. And look, to be honest, those names at the top, if you were the ruler of the world, you couldn't have come up with a better environment for them to operate in for the last 6 months, where you forced everyone to stay at home and order everything online or download or stream it. If we start to see the intersection of these two things we're looking at, and we do start to see vaccines, we do start to see people return to work, return to bricks and mortar shopping and cinemas and those things that we're talking about, then you've got to look forward through, the outlook for those companies and go, well, it's not going to be such a perfect environment for them. Do I really want to pay up 30, 35, 40 times earnings, or am I going to go back to a normal market multiple? The last piece I would say on that one as well is we're obviously all going to pay attention to what Jerome Powell's going to say in Jackson Hole tonight. And I think there's potentially significant changes there in terms of interest rates and the inflationary outlook. I expect he will reiterate some of the comments that his predecessor, Janet Yellen, made and talk about the average inflation targeting regime over time. Yellen spoke specifically about let the economy run hot for a while. So if we do go into a higher inflationary environment, we would see rates, I think, come up a little bit, and then valuation multiples come under pressure in that sort of environment.
Okay, lots to chew on there. Big risk events. Jon Reilly, always a pleasure to have you join us from Implemented Portfolios.
Pleasure's mine. Thanks, guys.